Grimsby Town head coach David Artell has opened up on the tragic sudden death of Alex Hughes, son of Manchester United legend Mark, following his passing in June.
Losing a child changes a parent forever. At 62, Mark Hughes is now speaking about his son, Alex, whose recent death has left behind grief, questions, and memories that are impossible to escape. Mark has finally decided to talk about what really happened, but he doesn't simply offer a story of loss. He reveals a deeply personal side of what his family went through. And once you hear him speak, the silence surrounding Alex becomes impossible to ignore. The morning no one saw coming. On the 19th of June, 2026, Alex Hughes collapsed on the floor of his bedroom at his home in Macclesfield, Cheshire. He was 38 years old. His two young sons, Sebastian, who was 11, and Leonardo, found him around 7 in the morning. Sebastian dropped to his knees and started performing CPR on his own father. Think about that for a second. An 11-year-old boy, in the early morning light, doing chest compressions on the person who was supposed to protect him, not the other way around. Paramedics arrived and could not revive Alex. He was pronounced dead in the home where he lived with his wife Jessica and their 2 boys. Mark Hughes and his wife Jill released a statement through the League Managers Association that read like it was written through tears. They said they were totally heartbroken by the sudden and unexpected loss of their beloved son Alex. They called him a wonderful son, a brother to Curtis and Zena, a devoted husband and father to Jessica and their 2 beautiful children, Sebastian and Leonardo. Mark added that Alex was the player recruitment lead at Grimsby Town and had many good friends and colleagues, and that he would be so deeply missed by them all. Grimsby Town called Alex a devoted husband, a proud father, a beloved son, and a highly valued member of the Grimsby Town family. They said his warmth, professionalism, and positive personality made a lasting impression throughout the club and the wider football community. But nobody outside the family knew yet what had actually killed Alex Hughes. And when the answer finally came, it would reveal a condition so terrifying that it hides inside a perfectly healthy-looking heart and strikes without a single warning sign. The killer that leaves no trace. The inquest at Cheshire Coroner's Court in August 2026 confirmed the official cause of Alex Hughes's death. It was sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, commonly known as SADS. If you have never heard of it, that is exactly what makes it so dangerous. SADS is what doctors diagnose when a person dies from sudden cardiac arrest, but the post-mortem examination finds absolutely nothing wrong with the heart. No blocked arteries, no structural damage, no visible defect of any kind. The heart looks completely normal on the outside, and yet it killed its owner without producing a single symptom beforehand. The British Heart Foundation has said that SADS usually happens when a dangerously abnormal heart rhythm goes untreated and leads to a cardiac arrest. The problem is that the rhythm disorder is almost impossible to detect in a standard medical exam. It is an electrical fault, not a plumbing problem. The wiring inside the heart misfires catastrophically, and by the time anyone realizes what is happening, it is already too late. Medical research has shown that SADS is the most frequent cause of death in people under 35 in the United Kingdom. It affects roughly 500 people every year, and about 65% of victims are male. Nearly half of all SADS deaths happen during rest or sleep, which lines up exactly with how Alex was found. He went to bed feeling fine and never woke up. Because SADS is a genetic condition, the SADS Foundation has warned that each child of an affected parent has a 50% chance of inheriting the underlying heart disorder. Families often only discover the condition exists after they have already lost someone. There are potential warning signs like unexplained fainting or dizziness. But many people who carry the condition never experience a single symptom in their entire lives. And what makes this loss even more devastating is that Alex Hughes was not just another name in a medical statistic. He was the son of a man who spent 4 decades proving that no challenge was too great to overcome. A man who had survived the pressure of playing for Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and Manchester United, and who was now facing the one battle that no amount of strength or determination could win. The shy boy who became a legend. Most people know Mark Hughes as Sparky, the fearless striker who scored spectacular volleys at Wembley and won trophies across Europe. Very few people know where that nickname actually came from. Mark was born Leslie Mark Hughes on the 1st of November 1963 in Rhuaben, a tiny village in Wrexham, Wales. His father played as a goalkeeper locally, and young Mark grew up in a close-knit community where football was everything. He attended the local school and was so shy as a boy that friends would later describe him as someone who barely said a word unless he absolutely had to. A Manchester United scout named Hugh Roberts spotted him and offered him a trial at Old Trafford. Mark was only 15, and he was so painfully shy that he initially refused to sign. He eventually joined the youth setup in the summer of 1980, and when manager Ron Atkinson met him, he described the teenager as a bit dour, a bit deep, and not terribly enthusiastic. Atkinson used the Sparky nickname ironically, as a joke about how lifeless the young striker seemed in training. Mark later said that Atkinson's favorite pastime was taking the mickey out of him and that the other players loved watching it happen. But the quiet boy from Rhuaben scored on his Wales debut against England, won his first FA Cup with United in 1985, and was then pushed into a transfer to Barcelona for £2 million in 1986. In a BBC documentary years later, Hughes watched footage of his younger self telling cameras he was excited about the move and admitted bluntly that he was lying. He said he never had the confidence to say he did not want to go, and he just kept going along with it until he found himself on a plane to Spain. Barcelona nearly broke him. The introverted Welshman could not adapt to the culture, the scrutiny, or the tactical demands, and he later called it the lowest point of his entire career. A loan spell at Bayern Munich brought him back to life, and his return to Manchester United in 1988 for a club record £1.8 million became the foundation of Sir Alex Ferguson's dynasty. His 2 goals in the 1990 FA Cup final against Crystal Palace, including a desperate extra-time equaliser in the 116th minute, are widely credited with saving Ferguson's job. He went on to win 2 Premier League titles, 4 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, and 2 Cup Winners' Cups. And through all of it, from the isolation of Barcelona to the glory of Old Trafford, he was also raising a family. His eldest son, Alex, was not just watching from the stands. He was absorbing every lesson about resilience, loyalty, and love for the game, following his father's footsteps. Most people outside the football industry never knew this about Alex Hughes. He did not simply admire his father's career from a comfortable distance. He embedded himself inside it. Alex had a brief playing career with the reserves at Stockport County and Wrexham, but when professional football as a player was not going to happen, he did something that showed more character than most people ever display. He stayed in the game and carved his own path from behind the scenes. In 2007, Alex joined Blackburn Rovers as the club's only performance analyst. His father was the manager at the time. When Mark moved to Manchester City in 2008, during the early years of the Sheikh Mansour takeover, Alex followed as a development analyst who later moved into recruitment analysis. When Mark took the manager's job at Fulham, Alex came along again as head of analysis. 3 clubs, 3 moves, father and son, side by side. And before anyone assumes Alex was simply riding on his father's name, consider what happened next. He left his father's orbit entirely. He moved to Portugal to work at a private football academy. He spent nearly a decade as a player agent, learning the business side of the sport from the ground up. He held positions at AFC Field as director of football and at Morecambe in scouting and recruitment. And then in 2025, Grimsby Town appointed him as their player recruitment lead after he emerged as the standout candidate from a pool of over 100 applicants. David Artell, who worked closely with Alex at Grimsby, described him as someone who was very good at his job, someone who took everything into account and approached recruitment with care and intelligence. Everyone who worked with Alex said the same things. He was warm. He was professional. He was humble. He never tried to be the biggest voice in the room because he did not need to be. His work spoke loudly enough. When people asked Alex which team he supported, expecting him to say Manchester United given his father's legendary status there, he would give the same answer every single time. He would say, "I support my dad." Those 4 words tell you more about the relationship between Mark and Alex Hughes than any interview or documentary ever could. And those same 4 words would later be shared at a funeral service so emotional that even Sir Alex Ferguson sat in silence as they echoed through a village church in Cheshire. The church where love began and ended. St. Peter's Church in Prestbury has held deep significance for the Hughes family since Mark settled there after returning from Barcelona in 1988. It is the church where Alex married his childhood sweetheart, Jessica. The two had met 21 years earlier at Cheadle Hulme High School and built their entire lives together from that foundation. The fact that Alex's funeral was held in the very same building where he had exchanged his wedding vows is the kind of cruel symmetry that no family should ever have to endure. On a bright day in early July 2026, hundreds of mourners packed every pew. Mark Hughes carried the coffin into the church alongside Curtis and Alex's father-in-law, David Pollock. Walking just behind was Jessica, flanked by Sebastian and Leonardo, Sir Alex Ferguson, Brian Robson, Ryan Giggs, Mike Phelan, Martin Edwards, Martin Keown, and John Walters were all present. David Artell led a group from Grimsby Town. Curtis Hughes stood at the front wearing sunglasses, fighting to hold back tears, and told the congregation that being best man was not something Alex did for a day. It was who he was. He said some people fill a room with noise, but Alex filled it with warmth, loyalty, and kindness. And then Curtis shared a moment that left the entire church in silence. He said that 2 days after they said goodbye to Alex, he was trying to distract himself with work when a bee flew straight into him. Curtis said in that moment, he just knew it was Alex, doing his best to annoy him one more time. David Pollock read messages from Alex's children. Sebastian, who was 11, wrote that his dad was the best dad he could ever wish for. He said he missed him so much and missed his funny jokes, and that he would love him and never forget him. Leonardo, the youngest, wrote something that shattered the room. His note said, "To my daddy, you are amazing at everything. You did everything right. Love you so much, Leo." Pollock also shared that Alex's sons, both gifted young athletes, had started pointing skyward every time they scored a goal. He spoke directly to them and told them that their father was so proud of their determination and their passion. He said Alex would always be watching them in spirit, watching them score goals and make tackles in every game. And when they look up and do their celebrations, which he said they had already been doing, their father would be watching over them, high in the sky. And then David read the final tribute. It came from Mark and Jill, the parents who had given everything to raise a son they called perfect. Their words said, "Alex, thank you for giving us the privilege of being your mom and dad. Thank you for every smile, every laugh, every hug, every precious memory. You were, and always will be, our perfect son. We love you beyond words. We always have, and we always will. Mom and Dad." Mark Hughes delivered his own private tribute at the committal after the service. The words he spoke in that moment have never been shared publicly. They belong to him, to his family, and to the son he will carry in his heart for the rest of his life. A legacy that lives beyond the pitch. The football world responded to Alex's death with an outpouring that revealed just how many lives he had quietly touched during his career behind the scenes. He worked in recruitment, analysis, and scouting, the unglamorous side of the sport, where results come from spreadsheets, late-night phone calls, and hours of footage review rather than from thunderous volleys at Wembley. But the tributes that flooded in from every corner of English football proved that influence does not require a spotlight. Grimsby Town called Alex the standout candidate from over 100 applicants when they appointed him in 2025. He had built his own reputation across multiple clubs, from Blackburn and Manchester City in the Premier League era to the lower leagues at AFC Fylde, Morecambe, and Grimsby. He had worked abroad in Portugal and spent years as a player agent. And through every chapter of his career, Alex maintained the same qualities that everyone remembered most: warmth, humility, and a quiet competence that never needed to announce itself. David Artell captured it perfectly when he said Alex liked process. In the world of football recruitment, where egos and opinions collide daily, the person who stays calm and trusts the work is the person everyone wants in the room. The genetic nature of SADS means that Alex's death carries implications beyond grief. His two young sons may now need cardiac screening to determine whether they carry the same inherited condition that took their father. The SADS Foundation has stated that early detection and treatment can prevent deaths, but it requires families to seek out specialist evaluation after a loss. It is a painful reality that a syndrome defined by silence, one that hides behind a normal-looking heart, can only be confronted after it has already claimed a life. The silence that says everything. Mark Hughes has never given a detailed interview about losing Alex. There is no television appearance where he breaks down in front of cameras. The man who spent 4 decades under the most intense pressure that professional football can produce has chosen to process this loss exactly the way he has processed every moment of pain in his life, in silence. And if you have followed his story from the beginning, that silence makes complete sense. Mark Hughes was always the quiet one. He was the shy boy from Ruabon who chose his nickname from a comic book because it rhymed with his name. He was the teenager who was so introverted that he refused to sign for Manchester United the first time they asked. He was the striker who Ron Atkinson mocked as dour and lifeless, and who then responded by scoring the goals that built a dynasty. He told the world he was excited about Barcelona when he was lying through his teeth. He survived the loneliness of Spain, the intensity of Germany, and the pressure of managing clubs across England without ever losing his composure in public. People sometimes confuse silence with emptiness. They assume that because a person is not speaking, they are not feeling. With Mark Hughes, the opposite has always been true. He carried the coffin of his son into the same church where that son had been married. He listened to his grandson's note that said, "Daddy, you are amazing at everything. You did everything right." He heard Curtis say that a bee flying into him 2 days after the funeral was Alex's final act of brotherly annoyance. And then Mark stood at the committal and delivered a private tribute that no one else will ever hear. Football gave Mark Hughes everything. But football could not protect his son from a silent killer that had been hiding inside his heart since the day he was born. No tactic, no strategy, no amount of resilience can prepare a parent for that. Somewhere in Prestbury, in the same Cheshire village where he built his life after coming home from Spain nearly 4 decades ago, a 62-year-old man who conquered every challenge football ever threw at him is living with the one loss that no victory will ever heal. He does not need to say a word. The grief of a parent who buries their child speaks a language that everyone understands without a single sentence needing to be translated. If this story moved you or made you think about someone you love, share your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply remind someone that they are not alone.